Just a few weeks ago, we were up on Lookout Mountain, that beautiful view that you see there now, talking with Chris Young with the National Park Service at Point Park. So now this morning, we have come down the mountain talking with Chris yet again. We are on Orchard Knob, a place that and I'm sure so many people have passed millions of times. I've never been up here until today.
Yeah, so this is one of probably the fewest, slightest visited places in the National Military Park. We have 6 units, and this is probably one of those that not many people have come to. And we are on top of Orchard Knob. This is part of Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park, and really vital to the battles for Chattanooga that happened in 1863.
So, when you hear the tales of history, if you had a room of 20 people and Chris began to recount various stories for you, each one of the 20 probably would have their own respective takeaway. My takeaway so far this morning is that where you and I stand on November 25th of 1863, so stood General Grant watching the battle at Missionary Ridge.
Yeah, so the Battle of Orchard Knob takes place prior to Lookout Mountain. So it's not really a battle, it only lasts less than 10 minutes because there's so many Union soldiers and so few Confederates here that it's basically a sweep of Orchard Knob. But it is a great observation point because we're so high up. And so the Battle of Lookout Mountain that we just talked about was occurring on November 24th, and then on November 25th we have the Battle of Missionary Ridge, which is going to be the death knell of the Confederate grip on Chattanooga. And so this is where General Grant will watch the Battle of Missionary Ridge.
When you talk to Chris, and by the way, if you saw the last feature that we did with him, they do tours at Point Park on a regular basis. And so if this is interesting you can go up and hear some of these stories for yourself. But there is a soldier, Haygood was his name?
His name's Ambrose Hayward.
Ambrose Hayward. And he wrote, but one of the things that he wrote to his parents was about the valor on Lookout Mountain, but that if you want to understand feats of humankind, basically how they ever climbed Missionary Ridge.
Yeah, he tells his father, he writes him in December after the battles, that he should come and visit Lookout Mountain, or he's not really going to understand the feats of American soldiers. And then he tells his father, then go over to Missionary Ridge and hike up Missionary Ridge to try to understand what these men are doing. And these are men who are really unknown. Ambrose Henry Hayward, no one knows of Hayward. He's a sergeant in a Pennsylvania regiment, but because of what he left behind, we can understand what this individual is feeling and what he's writing his family. And that's for thousands and thousands of individuals.
And that's part of the power for you, Chris, because this is the historical recounting of the everyman, and that's who we all are. It's the power of individual fortitude and integrity and choice.
Yeah, so we think about General Grant here and the legacy that Grant has left behind during the Civil War and after the Civil War, but we don't often think of Henry Hayward. He's lost to history. And so that's really what's unique about Lookout Mountain or Orchard Knob or Missionary Ridge or Chickamauga or any of the units of the park, is because there were so many thousands of soldiers who today often are nameless,
right,
that changed this country's trajectory.
Okay, so a few things I'd love to ask you. First of all, I mentioned that I had never been up here until now. Is this a place where we can come?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's preserved by the military park. It's a city block with monuments up here. Soldiers place those monuments here during the period of commemoration and remembrance of what they did during the battles. And so you're more than welcome. This is all public land. Just behind us over here, there are Civil War fortifications. And so the cannon that we talked about at Lookout Mountain that are original, they're up here as well. So this is public land and more than open for you to come and visit.
Some little points of interest that Chris had pointed out to me. So we stood on the back side of this hill, and he was able to, of the knob, and he was able to show me where Craven's house is and the monuments that you see there at just above Craven's house. And then Fort Wood, which we all know the name. You can clearly see the wooded nature of it from this vantage point, but that was truly a fort, and it was from there that the Union Army came to the knob.
So if we go back to November 23rd, That is where the U.S. soldiers will attack Orchard Knob from, is Fort Wood. And if you find yourself driving through Fort Wood neighborhood today, you may see cannon in Fort Wood. And some of those cannon are the national, well, all of the cannon are the National Military Park's guns.
Yeah.
And we preserve and protect all of those too. So you'll see those all over Chattanooga. We may not have physical land in places, but we may have monuments or markers or cannon in places like Fort Wood. And that's because it was an important feature during the Civil War of where the attack on Orchard Knob began on the 23rd.
Every part of that 5-year-long war. Did you ever read the book Across 5 Aprils, by the way?
I have not read it.
Oh, it's a children's book, okay? If you've never read Across 5 Aprils, have your kids, if they're, I don't know, 4th or 5th grade through 8th grade, so your son Ethan
Perfect.
could read it. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But there are lots of points, obviously, in the war that are monumental and they're kind of firsts. This one I think is interesting because this was the first Thanksgiving, right? This was in that November week was the first Thanksgiving, and Abraham Lincoln had made a very important proclamation just days before. Tell us that.
He had on November the 19th of 1863. We're all familiar with his Gettysburg Address that's given at the Soldier Cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. But we often don't understand that the war is much broader than that also. So as Lincoln is giving this speech and as he is uttering the words that these soldiers have given their last full measure of devotion in order that that nation might live, that plans are underway for the fighting in Chattanooga. So just 5 days after Lincoln gives that famous address, there are going to be soldiers attacking Orchard Knob and Lookout Mountain and then Missionary Ridge, and giving their last full measures of devotion to push the Confederates away from this important city of Chattanooga so that the war can come to a close and reunification can happen in the country.
I wish that I could get inside your brain, but I thank you for sharing it with us this morning.
Thanks, Julie.
So the truth is our conversations, we hope, with Chris are kind of just beginning here on the show. We also hope that we've gotten you a little bit interested in getting out and exploring on your own. So we visited Point Park. Now this morning we're here at Orchard Knob. In the weeks to come, we'll catch Missionary Ridge. We'll hopefully go up to Signal Mountain, Signal Point. Of course, we'll head over to the battlefield in Chickamauga and give us a little bit more of an understanding of the very important week, really, or month, I guess. Was it a month?
The Chickamauga's in September. Chattanooga is in November, so we have a lot of time in between the two, 2 months.
All right. I'm going to bring pen and paper
That's
next
all right.
time.
That's
Thank
all
you,
right.
Chris, so much. The National Park Service website is your place to go. Aren't we grateful and lucky to be right here in Chattanooga? Thanks again.
Thanks, Julie.